Welcome into another edition of the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. Pete Sweeney here with Stephen Serda. And it's better news in Kansas City today as the Chiefs get a big-time win, riding the ship in Philadelphia by a score of 42-30. And I think the first person you got to talk about in this game, aside from Andy Reid getting his 100th win with the Chiefs against the team he had 100 wins against, or he had 100 wins for in the Eagles. I think the first person you got to talk about is Patrick Mahomes. Usually when the Chiefs win, we're talking about Mahomes, but he had this mishap in this game where I thought it was a ball that he forced, an interception, and it was shaky, I think, for a little bit there. And then the Chiefs offense just exploded after that. After that, you had a long touchdown drive that ended up in a rushing touchdown. Mahomes on the day ends up with 5 touchdowns, the 1 pick, the 278 yards, 131 passer rating. And really, this was a Tyreek Hill takeover day. We see different Chiefs step up when it comes to skill position players. It typically is Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill. The Eagles had a plan for Travis Kelce. They did not have a good plan for Tyreek Hill, who finishes with 11 receptions, 186 yards, and the 3 touchdowns. Steve, as you watch this game, what is your grand takeaway?
Well, it's nice to see the Chiefs offense be efficient, right? And yeah, they just had the 1 turnover from Patrick Mahomes where he was forcing it a little bit. And I almost felt like there was even times where he was being a little tentative in this game, where he was looking downfield, maybe extending a little bit too long because he didn't want to throw it downfield when nobody was open and have a bad turnover like we saw last week. And so that's a sign of progress that you want to see from this Chiefs defense or offense, because obviously we want to see them go nuts and score 42 points and have the long touchdowns and Tyreek Hill go crazy, but they can't turn the football over. And so a performance like this, where they didn't really turn the football over aside from that one play, put up 42 points, and the defense actually got a couple of red zone stops and even a 4th down stop, you got to be pretty happy about it. There's still lots of reasons to be concerned about the defense, but you should feel pretty good about this win.
Yeah, this is how I feel. And I know, like, what really stuck out after last game was Anthony Hitchens and him getting to the microphone and simply saying, we don't care if we give up 31 points or 24 points or whatever, so long as our offense scores more points. So in the room, I think they're going to be very happy regardless of how the defense looked. This was my first line of my rapid reaction. I think coming into the game, the Chiefs had been categorized by this and characterized by this, and it's that the offense needs to be incredibly efficient. And if it is not, the Chiefs could give up too many points and end up losing the game. And that's just the season, and that's where we're at. And I don't think Sunday's game, despite them winning and coming out on the winning end, really changed that all that much. I think the offense is still needing to be efficient. I know that there was a garbage touchdown at the end there to get the Eagles to 30 points, but early in this game, those miscommunications and missed tackles were rearing their ugly heads. And you have a Philadelphia Eagles team that right now is in some type of rebuilding mode. This is not a team that is considered to be a Super Bowl contender. And I think that's what Kansas City is now. It's Super Bowl or bust. And so I think you got to be thrilled. Like, you should be so happy that you got the victory, because we have seen these back-to-back losses, and you could not have another loss in a row, especially to a team like the Eagles. But it didn't really make me feel better about the Chiefs or getting back to that championship caliber level, because obviously the offense is there. But when you're playing a team like the Buffalo Bills, and you'll get them next week, and some of these other AFC contenders, this defense is not good enough right now to get you to the Super Bowl. It just is not. And I think that's, like I said, I think you should be happy, but that's kind of my takeaway right now, is that you're going to have to see significant improvement. Fortunately, it's only week 4.
Yeah, it wasn't flawless. It certainly wasn't flawless. And like I already mentioned, yeah, the defense is leaving a lot on the table. The tackling's still a problem. I contend that the worst tackling defense in football right now. And we saw that early on affecting the game. I don't really know how you fix that when you just don't have a ton of athleticism at the second level right now. Maybe it really is just Willie Gay coming in and his athleticism being that thing that can move sideline to sideline, and it changes the way the defense looks. But yeah, it's a problem. And I've been pushing back on the idea that this is the 2018 defense that is going to hold the Chiefs back this season. But that Eagles offense has really struggled to start the season. And they were moving the ball pretty easily against the Chiefs. And, the Chiefs offense wound up being too overwhelming for their defense, but they still put
Yeah.
up 30 points. And you caught some breaks from the Eagles too with some bad penalties. So yeah, you should absolutely be concerned.
I've seen a couple of the 2018 takes on Twitter, and I just have to remind people that defense was just so bad. I mean,
There's more talent on this one.
This defense feels like it's fixable, especially if you can get Frank Clark back. Charvarius Ward, I think, is a more important injury. We never talk about Charvarius Ward because he's really never consistently getting beat. But that's like the ideal cornerback, not necessarily Jalen Ramsey. He's going to have an interception every other week. But he is a solid cornerback with this team, and I think the Chiefs are missing him to an extent. I also think like you get Willie Gay back, you tackle a little bit better. I mean, there weren't really many significant changes when the Chiefs were able to turn it around in the 2019 season, and really just adding Mike Pennell to the mix. And it just was more of a shift in attitude. And I still sense that about this Chiefs defense. You can fix your attitude and you could fix miscommunication. The fact that we've seen all of these weeks with miscommunication, and at a certain point in this game, you have Chris Jones and he's like begging for a timeout early in the game. And now you've also put that a little bit on film. You are sort of what you put on film. And you could tell that the Eagles were taking advantage of those miscommunications. They were making a point of it to get to the line as quickly as possible early in this game to catch the Chiefs off guard. And I thought for a quarter and a half, 2 quarters, you get to halftime, this was a team that was playing with the Chiefs. And if a few things maybe went a little bit differently, especially after the Patrick Mahomes interception in the second half, I think it's a much closer game than it wound up being from a score wise. But the idea is also starting to be floated out there that perhaps Chris Jones should be moved back to more of a primary defensive tackle position. And I can't say that I necessarily disagree, but here's where I would push back. I just don't know what you do at the edge position then, because Alex Okafor at this stage, it doesn't seem like a viable option. Mike Dana really is the only one that provides upside. Frank Clark, you could assume, could be an edge guy when you put Chris Jones back in the interior, but then I'm thinking, like, can we even really rely on him to be on the field at this point? I don't know if you can. He was ruled out for this game on Saturday, and so I think the defense is fixable. I know that this Chris Jones conversation is going to come up, and I'm eager to see where it goes throughout the week. I am going to be very curious to see Steve Spagnuolo's words on Thursday.
Yeah, I've mentioned it multiple times now. This defense just can't be the worst defense in the NFL. Like, it's okay if they're like 22. Like, I'll even take that. I think I said 17 earlier this week on one of our Arrowhead Pride podcasts.
Well, it's because of the offense, dude.
Yeah.
And that's why you're correct.
And yeah, it's because even when they make mistakes, this offense can do that. And, I think the attitude around the offense had changed a little bit after what happened last week, where this game, you felt like the Chiefs probably had it in the bag. They were the more talented football team than the Philadelphia Eagles. But it still kind of took some late, big plays, Tyreek Hill going absolutely nuts for you to be like, okay, I feel good about this now because I have no confidence in the defense getting a stop. And maybe Frank Clark can do that if he comes back and he is healthy. He hasn't contributed this season. And you basically have to hope that if you move Chris Jones back inside full time and you get a healthy Frank Clark back, that pressure Chris Jones can create from that spot, hopefully, is just going to lead to other guys contributing, because it's not working with him on the edge.
Well, it's just all about the offense. I mean, you're just going to live and die by the offense at this point until the defense can prove that they could win you a football game. And like the Chiefs, if their offense was just efficient, they would have ended up winning against the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, you were setting yourself up for a kick, and it was just a fumble away. And then you had the 4 turnovers, the 2 picks and the 2 fumbles against the Chargers. If 1 or 2 of them you could have back, then you win that game too, and you're all of a sudden undefeated. And I think there's sometimes where you get losses on your record, and things happen, and then it makes you, I think, look inward and say, well, what do we got to do to fix that? And I think the Chiefs came out today, were efficient offensively, and this is usually how the ending is going to go when the Chiefs are as good offensively as they were. I mean, the Chiefs defense could have let up another 11 points and been 41 points, and the Chiefs would have ended up winning this game because of what Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill were able to do. The running game was really good. I think if you're looking for positives, it's you're not going to necessarily find them defensively other than Mike Dana and some of the red zone stops. But I thought the run game was really good. This Chiefs offensive line is impressive, and it's especially impressive on the right side with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. These guys do not look like rookies. I knew that there might be some growth for Lucas Niang that still needs to be had. I didn't think he had a great game with that pen. I know there was a key penalty that he ended up taking, but just that interior with these two rookies, and so much is made about the rookie contract for a quarterback. This is like an extension of that. I mean, you have these two studs locked up in their rookie contract for the next 4 years. They look like veterans, Steve, like in this run game. And it's the second week in a row, we should mention, where Clyde Edwards-Helaire was able to get 100 rushing yards.
Yeah, and that interior offensive line is a big part of that. Clyde had that late, it was like inside the red zone carry where he just had a massive gaping hole to run through. I think he got stopped on the 1 yard line. Clyde looked impressive, and a big part of it is this team's good at run blocking. And that was kind of what we talked about with Orlando Brown Jr. too, is that's where he really excelled with the Baltimore Ravens. Lucas Niang has gone through some growing pains, but you have to assume the offensive line is going to continue to get better as the season goes. And that's something we've talked about a ton. It takes a while for those guys to know how everybody moves and to gel together, because once you become a true unit, this guy's got my back if something breaks down here or whatever. And so we're seeing that kind of unfold with the offensive line, and it's hard not to be impressed with them. And the Chiefs running game, I love this version of Clyde. Clyde has really bounced back in a huge way since that Baltimore Ravens fumble. Back-to-back weeks, you mentioned it. He's been exceptional, and I hope they continue to get him involved in the offense, because it changes things when you can bank on Clyde being that dude week in and week out.
Right, and I think when you have the power targets that are Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, you can't be putting as many defenders in the box, and that's going to open up things for Clyde. And Clyde is that type of guy where if you give him just a little bit of room, you could see what he can do on the ground. Like I said, back-to-back games of 100 yards. Worth noting here that it was a little bit more of a committee running back situation this week. Clyde got 14 carries, but Darrell Williams had 10 carries of his own for 42 yards and the score. And I also want to note, and I tweeted this about the run game, I just thought so many times last year on third and short, second and short, the Chiefs were just getting stuffed and stuffed and stuffed. And I know it doesn't sound like it should be a big deal, but them being able to pick up a yard is a welcomed change. And you can see what it does when a team's like, okay, well, we forced third down up, the Chiefs gain 3 yards, another set of first downs. Where's that a defense? It ruins their will to win. And I thought that was a key part in the second half for the Chiefs, just continuing to extend these drives. And it's also like the defensive approach that these teams, and you saw it on the broadcast early, where they're just not going to get beat deep anymore. Okay, so play methodical football. You could try that. I'm sure Tyreek Hill is still going to get his. We saw at the end of the game. But if they're going to force you to play methodical, okay, play methodical football and watch us score 30 or 40 points as we bleed this clock out. I think the Chiefs are really showing something in that. Yes, they can have the 3 or 4 yard play drive where Travis Kelce ends up getting a 62-yard touchdown. Tyreek Hill ends up getting an 80-yard touchdown. But I'm really more impressed with these slow, methodical drives that the Chiefs are having to do because of the way the opposing defense is playing them.
Yeah, and I talked about it a ton this week as well. If defenses are going to do everything they can to take away Tyreek Hill, and today the Eagles said we're going to take away Travis Kelce, and
they said no Kelce today.
And so Tyreek Hill just absolutely destroyed them and was completely unguardable today. So you got to pick your poison with that. But yeah, early in the game when they were struggling to go downfield, you like seeing that from this Chiefs offense because it does have to evolve a little bit. And I would say more often than not, teams are probably going to be more okay with Travis Kelce having over 100 yards and carving you up over the middle than they are going to be with Tyreek Hill having nearly 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. So a lot more defenses are going to try to take away Tyreek Hill, I would assume. And so this Chiefs offense has to evolve a little bit. You have to become the Brady, Peyton Manning type of efficient offenses, where that's another step in Mahomes' game where, okay, you're not going to let me sling it downfield like I want to, then I'm just going to carve you up sideline to sideline. We've seen Aaron Rodgers do that as he's gone later in his career. And that's something that Patrick Mahomes is going to continue to get better at. And if he does that, that's going to free things up down the field. And this Chiefs offense will just be even more unstoppable.
I want to get to this point, Steve, because we're on the offense right now, that there was a report this morning from Ian Rappaport of NFL Network, essentially saying that the Chiefs have been so impressed with Josh Gordon and how he's picking up the offense, and he may be available for Sunday Night Football as soon as next week. I thought this was a possibility. I didn't think there was any way he was playing this week, even though I know a lot of people thought that might be a chance, a possibility. But I could see the Chiefs building in some plays for Gordon. I don't think he'll be a huge part of the offense. I just got to know. You see Andy Reid. Do we have Andy Reid to put on here? All
right. So, but we want to be able to do both and do it when we want to do it. So. Yeah, listen, I mean, you guys asked me this last week about, does it bother you? Well, yeah, it bothers everybody. I mean, you're in a profession where winning is very important. And so these guys take that personal, and they understand that. And they've had success, and they want to get back doing the things that they know are correct. And we weren't doing that for a couple of weeks. We had all these turnovers and too much. You give games away that way, and that's what we did. So it was important that we buckle down better and do a nice job, and that's what happened. Yeah, listen, I mean, they had a good week the week before, so but it's a bit of a mindset in a lot of cases, and I was pleased with the way they performed today. I think Nick's doing a nice job with this team, so people here need to be patient with him. He's new to town, and you saw what he's capable of doing here, and I think the Eagles are in good hands here.
I hear you on the red zone defense. It looked like there was some snaps where maybe there was some confusion, substitution patterns and stuff like that. Am I right about that? And so how big a concern is that?
Yeah, there were a couple just on. It wasn't necessarily, it was a guy tired here or there and getting him in and getting him out. So, but that happens. That happens during the game, and in particular when you're shuffling people, trying to keep them fresh during these warm weather months. So, we'll get that cleaned up.
Andy, when you see the team, you see the results match the preparation that you did put in today. You see the results match. How gratifying is that for the whole staff?
Yeah, well, the guys work hard. The coaches work hard. They spend a lot of time doing this, and then the players. We've got a group that they're not afraid to work. So you want them to have success, and it's good for them to have that. Yeah.
And you and Tyreek have amazing performances. What makes this one in particular special to you?
We got you, we got you, Coach. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't just the last play. I mean, it was all the way through here. We've got the two guys that people are going to try to take out of the game between Kels and him, and they've got to really work for everything that they get. And so
there you go. Chiefs head coach Andy Reid talking about the game. I see from Twitter that he was talking about getting that 100th win in Philadelphia. It's got to be a good feeling. And the circumstances were kind of funny here. You never thought that the Chiefs would drop 2 of their first 3 games. You never know if maybe they drop 1. And the way it worked out, he could get that 100th win in Philadelphia. Vahe Gregorian of the Kansas City Star asked him about it, and he asked Vahe if he wanted him to cry. so some lightheartedness from the head coach. Not really a big individual accolade guy, but I think you could tell from his voice he was happy to right the ship here with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean that's a big W for Andy Reid, right? And it's the The atmosphere around Kansas City this week has been kind of negative. Obviously, it's not a good way to start the season the way every other team in the AFC West is looking right now. The Chiefs needed this win. And, you want to see the defense make strides, but if you got to do what they did in 2018 and just put up 35, 40 points a game, then let's do it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, no, I thought that this could turn into a shootout very early in this game because of the way that it was looking, and it ended up being that way. And I think for a little bit until the defense figures it out, you're going to really have to put up points. Like I feel the same way looking ahead to Buffalo next week. I mean, this is a team with a strong offense that's going to come in and they're going to be putting up points, and you may need 49 points to beat Buffalo, Steve. So I think a lot of people and a lot of national media, after they got over Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick tonight, they're going to be locked in on this game next week, because even though both of these teams have a couple losses here, this will be the premier battle in the AFC to see, okay, how is the AFC going to go this year? Who do you have to beat along the way to get to the Super Bowl?
This next week against the Buffalo Bills, all of a sudden, like, it was always going to be a big game. It's Sunday night football, but the Buffalo Bills have looked dominant the past 3 games after kind of faltering in week 1 of the NFL season against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so now all of a sudden, this game is going to have a lot of hype. I know we've been talking about Brady's return to New England all week this week, but we need to start talking about this Chiefs-Bills game next Sunday, because the defense is going to have to step up against the Buffalo Bills the way that they're playing right now, and their defense has looked pretty good. So they're going to try to do a lot to slow down this Chiefs offense. So they got a lot to work on this week. And I don't know if Juan Thornhill was out there missing tackles today. I don't know if he's going to be the answer, but we've got to figure some things out before they take on the Buffalo Bills at Arrowhead.
The Chiefs need Frank Clark back in the lineup this week. I know he's dealing with a hamstring injury, and I just don't think there's any other options, aside from Mike Dana. If you're, putting Chris Jones inside, Alex Okafor doesn't seem like he has a ton left. And so to me, I think that'll be huge. Again, Charvarius Ward, and then we'll see about Willie Gay. We did see Willie Gay on the practice field during the media looks on Wednesday and Thursday of last week, but they have not brought him back from injured reserve yet. It's an interesting injury, the turf toe, but to me, that would be a huge boost as well. But the thing that is they're not going to rush either of these guys back, because, in the grand scheme of things, you do have to win these regular season games, but you're going to need Frank Clark to give you something if you're going to do something in the playoffs. And I think Willie Gay is going to be of the utmost importance if you're going to have success against a team like the Bills in the postseason when the postseason rolls around.
And one thing that Willie Gay isn't going to bring to this defense is the answer to their communication problems. We've seen it through 4 games, and it was apparent again today, especially on that Kenneth Gainwell touchdown later in the game, where it looked like the Chiefs had no idea what they were doing pre-snap. Eagles rushed to the line, snapped the ball, handed it off to Kenneth Gainwell, and he ran into the end zone for a touchdown. And that stuff, you can get away with that against a team like the Philadelphia Eagles. You can't get away with stuff like that against a team like the Buffalo Bills next week. And the Chiefs' schedule, we've talked about it a ton, doesn't get easier. They've got a tough schedule all throughout the year. That's what happens when you're the best team in the AFC. You play a tough schedule year in and year out. And so they do need to figure out what the communication issues are all about, because we've seen this in the past, even on the offensive side of the ball, where, penalties, communication miscues, we've seen that kind of rear its ugly head for the Chiefs before. They've always been able to overcome that, but it seems like the defense, it's part of the thing that's holding them back this year, in my opinion, because you just have to know where you're supposed to be. You have to know what you're supposed to be doing and the formations you're supposed to be running. And if you can't figure that out on a weekly basis, you're going to continue to get gashed.
Yeah. I agree, and I think that's definitely something that Steve Spagnuolo is really going to have to address, because it just seems like miscommunication. It seems like a 1 or 2 play problem that you end up fixing quickly. The fact that we're still talking about somehow miscommunications and calls really not getting to every level of the defense, that it seems like it's going on like the 3rd or 4th week. To me, that can't be. And I'm not always going to be one that's like, okay, I've already seen a couple people like, we need to get rid of Spagnuolo. No, I don't believe that. I think he's 2 years off of a Super Bowl, and we've seen him fix defenses in the middle of the year before. But this particular thing does seem like at least deserves some sort of explanation, because there's no excuse for multiple weeks of the same miscommunication problems. And I think it became even more apparent today, as I kind of mentioned before, the fact that the Eagles were like leaning into it. They were saying, we're going to rush so that maybe the Chiefs defense was confused, and they were early on. And that's why we saw the Eagles in the game for the first half of this thing. I want to talk about this part for a second, Steve. And that's Nick Sirianni. And I know that Chiefs head coach Andy Reid just credited Sirianni with getting that program together in Philadelphia. But you have your first drive of the game, and you're on the 3-yard line. And for some reason, the play clock was going to go down as 4th down. And you decide, okay, we're going to take a timeout so the play clock doesn't run out, and then you kick. And I just think that, man, it's already been put on tape how many points around, like, you need to beat the Chiefs. And there you are in the 3-yard line. I mean, the book is now changed. It's go for it. And if you don't get it, look, the Chiefs started the 3, and then they have to go 97 yards. You do have a safety opportunity. You have to score 7 points consistently to stay with the Chiefs. And there was another point where they were on the 7-yard line. And I understand that the offense was not looking great at the time, but they opted to kick a field goal instead of going for a touchdown. And then, to me, you look at the final score, and there it is. It's 42-30. Like, you just are not going to be able to beat the Chiefs by kicking field goals. And I think that was a mistake for Sirianni. I really think that John Harbaugh has established what you have to do. And Cleveland did it to an extent. The Ravens did it in their win against the Chiefs. You saw the Chargers doing it. Chargers went for it on 4th and 9. So you're not going from it at the 7-yard line. I just think you always got to be going for touchdowns. And if you don't get them, you're not going to win anyway, right? So go. You might as well go. I thought those two particular situations were key mistakes, and you see in the final score, it ended up costing the Eagles.
Yeah, and I've got some thoughts on Nick Sirianni and his 4th down play calling, or deciding not to go for it on 4th downs. But can we stop it with the highlighters first, Nick? You can't keep adding highlighters every week. He had 3 of them today. He had 2 last week, had 1 the week before. He keeps adding more and more highlighters in game. No, I think that today it felt like rookie head coaching, nervous to make the wrong call, because the Eagles offense wasn't having problems moving the ball at all today. And so, that should be each and every week. Go for it on 4th down against the Chiefs. That's the Mahomes factor, because when you don't, he could do what he did to you in the 4th quarter of that game. So you have to put up touchdowns. You can't settle for field goals. And early on in the game, the Eagles had a chance to go up a couple of scores, and they decided to settle for the field goals, and then it immediately bit them because Nick Sirianni didn't want to go for it on 4th down, and they settled for 3 instead of 7. And that's just not how you beat the Chiefs. And I guarantee Buffalo is going to be going for it on 4th down next week.
Yeah, I am interested in that, because if you remember, the Buffalo Bills actually led the Chiefs in the AFC title game, and early in that game, they were not going for it on 4th down. And I remember tweeting and live tweeting at the time and being like, why are they not going for it here on 4th and short? They're kicking field goals. And, even though they had a 9-0 lead, you blink and you see what Patrick Mahomes can do. And it happened to them in the AFC title game. Now they've seen it put on tape that if you're aggressive and you are able to score touchdowns, you can stay in a game with the Chiefs. I got to think McDermott's going to be way more aggressive when the Chiefs and Bills do meet up on Sunday Night Football next week. What is your panic level with this Chiefs defense as we stand here through 4 weeks, Steve?
It's pretty high. So I don't rush to judgment in the NFL season. Like, I want to get through week 4 is usually kind of where I set the bar. Get a month into the season. That's a large enough sample size, in my opinion, to decide whether or not it's time to worry. And now, I don't think that means that they can't turn some things around on defense. Maybe Frank Clark, a healthy Frank Clark, is the actual difference maker there. Maybe Charvarius Ward comes back and adds a little bit more stability to the Chiefs cornerbacks. But there's no reason, in my opinion, right now to feel confident about them significantly turning this thing around. Like I mentioned, it's just be like the 22nd best defense in the NFL is like all I'm hoping for at this point. Force some turnovers here and there and
Right.
get a couple of sacks, because it just doesn't seem like they can consistently stop anybody right now. And I thought that they had enough talent on this defense, even though we had some question marks coming into the season, that they would be better than this at this point, and they just simply aren't. And now we've got a 4-game sample size where they haven't been particularly good in any game. They just happen to catch some breaks today and some poor decision-making by Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, I don't think my panic level is all that high, but I will say this. I don't think they're a championship level defense. Could you win a championship with this defense? Yeah, because Mahomes can score 50 points any day of the week. I think you're going to significantly better your chances to win a championship if the defense can play better. By the way, I'm seeing some of the injuries come through. Ben Neiman is in the concussion protocol. We'll see what happens with Rashad Fenton next week. And again, we'll be watching Charvarius Ward and Frank Clark are the injuries to watch. But I don't think I'm super panicked, just because I know Steve Spagnuolo has turned it around before, and we are looking at 14 more weeks here, 13 more weeks to get it right. I think the Bills will be a good benchmark, and I'm eager to see if there's any kind of scheme changes or personnel changes when it comes to what the Chiefs defense is going to do against Buffalo. One point I want to make sure we hit on before we close this thing down, Steve. You got to call the challenge, or you got to challenge, or you got to call timeout on the Kenny Gainwell play. If the game went completely differently and the Chiefs wound up losing on Sunday in Philadelphia, a lot of people would have brought that up and been like, how do you not challenge in that situation? And I think it extended it being a game for longer than it had to be. The Chiefs really pulled away in the fourth quarter. This might have been one of these halves at the beginning of the game where you go into the locker room and maybe you're up 8 to 14 points because you would have ended up taking away what turned into a touchdown drive for the Philadelphia Eagles. So how that happened, that to me, I thought was a little bit inexcusable. I'm sure just a miscommunication, and whoever it is that is supposed to buzz Andy Reid, very fortunate that the Chiefs were able to come out with the win today.
Yeah, and that's not the first time we've seen that happen. If you remember the Tyreek Hill touchdown from last season, that it appeared like the Chiefs didn't even look at it. So maybe they just didn't look at this either. Somebody's got to have that job. Somebody's got to be the guy that says, no, we need to take a look at this really quick. Don't rush to just assume that the refs made the right call, because as we see on a week in, week out basis, the refs make bad calls all the time. So
yeah, well, Mick Schaefer, 41, had a good point. I saw him tweet this out. Why not just call that a fumble and let it play out, and then you can go back on it, because the turnovers get reviewed automatically. You might as well just let it play out. But yeah, no, I didn't get that, and I think in that type of situation where you have struggled in the red zone, you're now in the red zone, and that would have been an easy turnover. It just is a mistake that the Chiefs are fortunate they won against a better team. You got to get that right. Like if that happened against the Buffalo Bills next week, who are supposed to be your biggest foe in the AFC, that may cost you the game. Because I think the margin for error gets a little bit closer. I also think this, and this is one of my final points about the Chiefs offense too. If the Chiefs offense is going to have one turnover or maybe even two or less, I think you're going to win most Sundays, regardless of how bad the defense looks. That's just the way the Chiefs offense is. I've tried to tell people this. So I think if you just play good, sound football, you're going to win most weeks. I think we know that about the Chiefs, and that buys the defense time. And I just think the Chiefs are going to win championships. And it's not ever going to be because the defense is a certain thing. It just has to be okay. It's going to be because of Patrick Mahomes and the offense. So you see the result of only having the one turnover on Sunday and the defense playing bad. You're still ending up winning the game. So I think ball security is probably of the utmost of importance for this team, followed by the defense. But ball security. You don't turn the football over, you're probably scoring 38 to 45 points with Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and we saw that even when you try to take away the deep ball from the Chiefs, it's just, okay, fine. We can run the football now. We have an offensive line that can open these massive rushing lanes for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We'll get Darrell Williams involved, maybe work Jerick McKinnon in a couple of snaps here. And then eventually Tyreek Hill's going to break free downfield. And so, yeah, the offense has always been the reason you're going to win a championship or be contending for a championship. And that certainly hasn't changed. I just want to see less of, okay, Mahomes has to cover up all of the mistakes of the team because he's so exceptional. And I understand that's part of the job when you're the best quarterback in the NFL. But it also is a little unfair to Patrick Mahomes as a player that he's constantly got to compensate for the other areas that the Chiefs are lacking in. But he did it today, aside from the one interception. So he can obviously handle the pressure if he needs to.
Well, that's it. With the end of the Eagles Rapid Reaction Show, we are now into Buffalo Bills week, which includes a lot of action coming at you from the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. Stick around on this podcast as we'll give you the Kansas City Chiefs pressers from Philadelphia. And then also on the podcast tomorrow, it's the Arrowhead Drive. Following the Arrowhead Drive, we will have Out of Structure and those guys taking your questions from Twitter, the Editor Show, and other Arrowhead Drives. So we are going to continue on here as the Chiefs try to build off of this 42-30 win over the Philadelphia Eagles, get the defense right, and be ready for those Buffalo Bills on Sunday night. Steve, this time next week, you and I will be doing this at like 11:30 midnight. We'll have sleep in our eyes. That's another night that I'm going to have coffee, like really a lot of coffee at Arrowhead Stadium.
Second one of the year.
Yeah, so that should be good. All right. Well, for Steve Serda, I'm Pete Sweeney. Thank you for joining us on the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show.